What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Russia has always been a land of paradoxes. The country that spans 11 time zones, that calls itself an empire, at least in Putin's words, that loves to flex nuclear arsenals on parades while its citizens patch broken windows with cardboard. Well, now this country faces a crisis that no tank, no hypersonic missile, no cyber attack can fix. It's not inflation, not sanctions, not even battlefield defeats. It is something deeper, something fatal. Russia is running out of people. Not metaphorically, literally. A slow-motion demographic collapse that began with the fall of the Soviet Union has now turned into a nosedive accelerated by Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. And here is the bitter irony. Even if Russia somehow claims victories in the short term, the country is doomed to lose the long game, because the one resource it cannot print, steal, or fake are human beings. They tried to motivate young couples to have more kids, offered financial support for first-time mothers, but it barely moved the needle. It's not the incentives that people are missing, it is the entire different mindset from 2-3 generations ago. Oh, and obviously war in Ukraine, which grinded a big portion of able-bodied men in their best years of their lives. There is that too. So today, let's break down how Russia's dwindling population became its greatest enemy, why the war has turned a national crisis into a death sentence, and what it means for the empire that dreamed of ruling for centuries, but cannot even guarantee pensions for its own people. To understand Russia's predicament, you have to rewind back to the 1990s, when the Soviet Union collapsed under the weight of its own rot. For ordinary Russians, this meant freedom to leave a suffocating dictatorship. Millions grabbed their bags and fled, draining the country of its brightest and most ambitious people, men and women. Those who stayed behind faced another problem. The birth rate collapsed. Besides, obviously, many other problems of Russia in the 90s, of course. By 2024, the average Russian woman had only 1.5 children, far below 2.2 needed to statistically replace the population. Compare that with the desperate Soviet years, when even amidst war, famine and purges, women were still having far more children than they are today. It is as if modern Russians looked around at their prospects and collectively just decided, no, thank you, better not bring kids into this world. The reasons are not complicated. Wages are pathetic, housing is unaffordable, corruption suffocates opportunity, and hopelessness eats away at every plan for the future. Why start a family if your country does not promise stability but guarantees misery? And then, once again comes Putin's war. When hundreds of thousands of young men are killed, crippled, or forced to flee abroad, it is not just bodies that vanish from the battlefield. It is the fathers, husbands, and potential future generations erased. Because think about it, who is the prime target for mobilization? Who is the prime target to fight? Young, strong man in his 20s or 30s, physically and mentally healthy, capable of following orders, and ready to benefit the society. If they're not drafted, they're also the ones escaping Russia. I mean, nobody's gonna draft a 19-year-old guy, right? So even though the direct casualties already surpassed 1 million people, 10 times more escape the country to never return, or at least not to return in the next several years. So a big, very big percentage of Russian men in their prime just simply vanish from the country. Then there are obviously the ones who get killed in Ukraine. Each coffin shipped back from the war is not just a life lost today, it is the entire family tree cut down before it can even sprout. Even worse, the demographic collapse accelerates itself. With fewer children being born, there are fewer women in the next generation able to have children, which means the decline snowballs exponentially until the point of no return. Demographers describe this as a population cliff, and Russia is sprinting towards the edge. What awaits beyond is not glory, but demographic extinction. The immediate consequences for now will not be felt for another decade or two. And I mean, that's why I guess Putin barely cares about what is going to happen once he's gone. Horrible mindset, but what else would you expect from a person like him? Let's try to now briefly analyze his way of thinking in our next chapter. If you wanted to design a policy guaranteed to accelerate a demographic collapse, you would do exactly what Putin has done since February 2022. Take your already fragile pool of young men, the exact demographic you need to sustain your workforce and pension system, and then just simply throw them into a meat grinder of artillery, drones and trench warfare, trying to capture a settlement of 500 people. Then terrify hundreds of thousands more into leaving the country to avoid being drafted. What you're left is not just an army bled dry, it is a society with generational gaping holes in its future. When Putin launched his invasion, there were around 7 million men in their 20s. Within 3 years between casualties and mass flight, that number shrank by nearly 1 million. Think about it and do the simple math. In a little over 3 years, Russia lost more than 15% of its most vital demographic group. These are not statistics, they are the backbone of a nation. They are the workers who would power factories, pay taxes and raise families. Without them, pensions collapse, hospitals run out of staff, and schools stand half empty. And this is not just about economics. Russia has a long shadow of demographic scars. After the Second World War, entire generations were missing, leaving population gaps that still ripple through society today. Now the same cycle repeats, except this time it is self-inflicted. Putin claims he worries about Russia's demography, even tells reporters before the war that declining population is something that kept him awake at night. And then, the very next moment, he just promptly launches a war that ensures that this one thing he supposedly fears the most is just bound to 100% happen. If you want an image of absurdity, besides what I just told you, just imagine a man screaming about a leaking boat being inside of it, while swinging his axe around trying to stop the leakage, while trying to cut the water or something. No, that is basically Putin's Russia in 2025. I mean, the irony is breathtaking. Putin hoped to use what's left of Russia's youth as cannon fodder to secure his geopolitical legacy, but in the process, he is ensuring that the Russian state has no legacy at all. Future wars, if Russia even dares to fight them, will not be decided by tanks or nukes, not even by drones, but by the cold arithmetic of how many young men are left to hold a rifle. At the rate things are going, Russia's next big war might be cancelled not by diplomacy but by simply biology. And guess what? If a random YouTuber can figure this out, what about Russia's potential enemies? Don't you think they do not see the upcoming demographic crisis? Is there a possibility someone is going to take advantage of a weaker Russia? Well, you guys tell me. But honestly, big brains inside the Kremlin, I mean, at least I hope they should know about this huge internal problem as well, right? Do they do anything to fix it? Let's try to answer this question in our next chapter. It's not that the Kremlin does not know about the demographic crisis. They know, and they have tried to even fix it. But every remedy has been absurd, hypocritical, or disastrous. Back in 2018, for example, Putin himself admitted that low birth rates threatened national security. By 2021, just months before ordering the invasion of Ukraine, he declared that Russia's biggest challenge was not NATO or sanctions, but demographics. And yet, well, the war began anyway. The so-called solutions are laughable. The Kremlin launched programs encouraging women to have more children, with Putin nostalgically calling for 8 child families to preserve traditions. Well, the irony, he himself only publicly acknowledges 2 children, 2 girls, while living in a luxury lifestyle, far removed from the desperation of average Russians, no wife, no kids in sight, nothing, just him, one single person. When you're an oligarch's mistress, I mean, sure, you can afford a nanny army for your 8 kids, but for average woman in Omsk making $200 per month, another child is not a blessing, it is a ticket to even deeper poverty. Well, then there is the propaganda. Billboards and state TV campaigns tell young couples to have children for the motherland. But what does the motherland offer in return? A crumbling health system, escalating corruption, a war economy where food prices soar, and the possibility that your child grows up just in time to be thrown into another senseless conflict or even in the very same war's mid-grinder, who knows. With the only hope to escape the circle of doom is for vast majority of the population is to literally sign a military contract and just hope not to die. So no wonder young Russians increasingly say, no thank you, we are out of this. And yet in their desperation, the authorities even toy with imperial logic. If Russia cannot make new Russians, why not conquer neighbors and then absorb theirs? Simple as that. Quote unquote. Some analysts argue that the invasion of Ukraine was at least partially driven by this very demographic calculus. For example, add 40 million Ukrainians and suddenly Russia's collapse looks less immediate. But populations do not work like oil reserves. You cannot just annex people like barrels of crude oil. Instead, you breed hatred, resistance, and an even greater drain on resources. If this was the master plan to fix demographics, then it's the geopolitical equivalent of trying to cure lung cancer by smoking more cigarettes. Demography is not just about national pride or abstract numbers. It's about whether a society can function. Russia's pension system is like a ticking time bomb. Like most modern systems, it relies on workers paying in while retirees draw out. That works only when you have a stable or growing population. But when the number of prime-aged workers shrinks by 15% while the number of pensioners grows, the system collapses. And that's not even a mere statistical error. 15% is a huge number. World War II already left a missing generation that continues to haunt Russia's demographics every quarter century. And now, Putin's war in Ukraine is just creating another one. Imagine the long-term effects. Fewer men to work, fewer families to pay taxes, fewer children to eventually take their place, and the rest is history. It just spirals out of control. Meanwhile, those who survive the war often come home disabled, shifting from potential contributors to lifelong dependers. The math does not look just bad, it looks catastrophic. And here is the brutal truth. Russia is headed towards a future where retirement may vanish entirely. The state will not be able to afford it. Already, pension ages have been raised, sparking protests, but that's only a band-aid. In 20 years, there may not be enough taxpayers left to keep the system afloat at all. And as the economy strains under sanctions and war spending, fewer resources will exist to patch the gaps. The cycle spirals downward in infinity until it reaches the point of no return, and only a financial crisis tends to reset the system. The demographic crisis is not reversible. Economists sometimes talk about baby booms as solutions, but in Russia's case, there are not just simply enough women of childbearing age left to spark one. Even if fertility rates magically doubled overnight, it would take decades for those children to enter the workforce. By then, the pension system would already be completely gone. That is why demography is the one Russian problem that cannot be solved by a ceasefire, by reforms, or by sanctions relief. It is slow death, baked into the numbers, accelerated by every decision Putin makes. You can lose money, you can lose wars, you can even lose territory and recover, but lose your people and you lose everything. The irony is almost comical. Putin, obsessed with restoring Russia's greatness, may be the man remembered for presiding over its irreversible decline. He claimed demography was his greatest fear, and then unleashed a war that guaranteed demographic self-destruction. He called for more children, and then created a society where hope itself is extinct. So what's next then? Experts say that within a decade, Russia may lack the manpower to sustain major military offensives, and within a generation, it may lack the workers to sustain even its own state. Its future got sold for the price of one man's delusion, because in the end, history does not care about parades or propaganda. History counts people, and Russia is running out of them, and doing so very fast. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support our work and help the Russian dude stay independent, there are links down below, for example, PayPal donations. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow. We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.